Welcome everyone. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us this evening. Before we get into our agenda today, we want to start by acknowledging the land. Our elders have shared that it is important to acknowledge the land where we gather and the first peoples who traditionally lived here. It shows respect for people, their contributions, and their ways of knowing, which are reflected through the stories and songs that have lived on this land for thousands of years. We are making this acknowledgement at the beginning of our gathering today to further demonstrate our commitment to work together as a community in laying the foundation for reconciliation through education. We would like to acknowledge the traditional territories and oral practices of the Blackfoot Nations, which includes the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai. We also acknowledge the Tsuut'ina and Stoney Nakoda First Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. My name is Karen Drummond, and I'm the Manager of Community Engagement. It's my pleasure to introduce the CBE leaders who are here with us this evening to share information with you, listen to your perspectives, and respond to your questions. We're pleased to have trustees here with us this evening: Dana Downey, Wards 1 and 2, Nancy Close, Wards 11 and 13, and Charlene May, Wards 12 and 14. Also Danny Breton, Superintendent, Facilities and Environmental Services, and Educational Directors Prem Randhawa, Kevin Howell, and Michelle Howell. We also have Latosia Campbell-Walters, Director of Planning, Dawn Barber, Principal, Discovering Choices and Alternative High School, and Crystal Derbyshire, Principal, Robert Thirsk High School. In terms of our agenda today, we will share some information about the Discovering Choices program and what is being proposed at the school locations. Then we'll talk about supporting the transition and the decision-making process. If you have any questions as we go through this content, please jot them down. We'll open up the question and answer window closer to the Q&A time. At that point, you can type in any questions or comments you have. Members of the team will provide written or verbal responses to your questions. We have an hour for the discussion today, and we'll do our best to answer all your questions. But if some questions still remain at the end of our time, then we will post information to the Discovering Choices webpage on the CBE website, the project page for this initiative. And now I'll ask Danny Breton, Superintendent of Facilities and Environmental Services, to share some opening remarks with us. Just give me one moment, Danny.
All right, good evening. Welcome everyone, and thank you very much for participating in this session this evening. Your input and your feedback is very important to us, and we recognize that your time is precious, so I'll move along on my opening remarks. We're pleased to share this evening information with you about the changes we're proposing for the Discovering Choices program. Changes that, if approved by the Board of Trustees, would only take effect September 1st of 2023. And so we're looking at 2023 as that potential first day of these changes actually taking effect. The changes, as you see on the slide before you, are to move the Bowness Discovering Choices program that is currently at a Bowness site over to the Robert Thirsk High School, and moving the Westbrook program, it's in the Westbrook Mall, to Alternative High School. Now, there are many reasons why these changes are being recommended. First and foremost, we think that it'll actually provide enhanced learning opportunities for students because of what they'll be able to access at those locations, all the while enabling and allowing us to continue to provide the individualized programming and supports that we know those students appreciate and value so much at those current sites. The new locations are close to the current program sites, and they're close to where students live. And so from a transportation perspective, we're certainly attuned to that and making sure that this is a consideration. This proposal maintains 4 locations for the Discovering Choices program, 1 in each quadrant of the city. And some of the other factors that influence why we're bringing this forward is the fact that we do have leases at the Bowness site and the Westbrook site that are expiring in 2023. Previous government direction that required outreach programs to be housed outside of schools no longer exists, so it suddenly opens up opportunities for us to look at existing schools to house these programs. And lastly, the government funding framework for outreach sites, such as Discovering Choices, has changed. And so we're looking to align to make these programs sustainable for the long term and continue to be able to offer the excellent support that we have been to students. So with all of this in mind, we believe the plan we're sharing with you here today is one, as I said, that will be beneficial to students. And we want you to know that we are committed to working with the families affected by these changes to provide as smooth a transition as possible. Again, thank you for your participation. Thank you for taking time to share your perspectives with us. And with those opening comments, I'll turn the floor over to Education Director Prem Randhawa, and she can provide some additional details about what is being proposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Breton. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. To start, you may be wondering what the Discovering Choices program is. Discovering Choices is an outreach program designed for students who find the regular school program and services do not meet their needs. It provides some additional supports and services to help students complete high school. This may include a particular focus on personal and career counseling, time management, study skills, and learning strategies. If relocation is supported, there would continue to be 4 locations for the Discovering Choices program. In 2022-2023 will be a transition year, with changes coming into effect for September 2023. We would then have 2 program locations in lease spaces, which would be downtown and Northgate, and 2 in high school locations. The alternative and Robert Thirsk locations were proposed because they are projected to have space and are close to where students attend the program and where they live, and would also provide enhanced learning opportunities, as Superintendent Breton has mentioned. It's important to note that students within Discovering Choices will continue to have flexibility to choose their best program location within the resources and spaces available. It's also important to note that the Nexus program that currently operates out of Bowness will relocate to the Northgate location, and this process will be in accordance with the work led by Inclusive Education. This transition will be aligned with the timeline proposed changes to come into effect for September 2023. Typically, on a regular day, Discovering Choices supports about 50 to 60 students in a face-to-face capacity, and this happens at Bowness and Westbrook currently. In the proposal and recommendation, there would be approximately 3 to 4 classrooms that would be allocated at the school sites to support students in their core programming. So once again, core programming and core subjects would continue to be taught by DC staff for DC students only. Also, there would be additional opportunities available for Discovering Choices students, such as enrollment in additional CTS and optional courses, and the ability to engage in extracurricular to support with school connections. These courses and activities would include Discovering Choices students, as well as Alternative High School and Robert Thirsk High School students. When looking at some more specific details at the locations, there are some additional opportunities within each location. For outreach students who relocate to Alternative High School, students have an opportunity to access CTS courses at Alternative High and Central Memorial High School, which is across the street. Further opportunities to access option courses will also be available to students attending either Robert Thirsk or Alternative High School, and this will be explored in greater depth and detail within the transition plan. I want to emphasize that the current and future Alternative and Robert Thirsk High School students will continue to have access to strong, robust programming, supports, and services. These changes will have a very minimal impact on the current offerings for students attending these schools. And now I'd like to hand it over to Director Michelle Howell to talk a bit more about how we will be supporting families through this transition.
Great, thank you so much, Prem. Good evening, everyone. These moves will need to be approved by the Board of Trustees. And as such, when it comes to what is being recommended, and in this case, we're talking about the move from Bowness and Westbrook programs to Robert Thirsk and Alternative High School, that is not something that we are currently seeking feedback on. However, what we do want to hear from staff and from families affected by these changes on how we implement this decision and provide a smooth transition. It's important that students are well supported and that families have a chance to share what they feel is important for us to consider. To provide a little bit more detail, the ways in which we're gathering input include virtual and in-person discussions with Discovering Choices students on March 15th, surveys for Discovering Choices staff, students, and parents, which are active now and all close on March 17th. And specifically for Alternative High School and for Robert Thirsk, we're looking to gather input at the school level within the school communities over the months of March and April. So if you haven't done so already, we encourage you to complete the online survey. And again, that post, the direct link will be posted at the end of this presentation. And it was also included in the email messages that were shared. The perspectives that are shared with us include information sessions, and through the survey will help us to understand what will help students and families in this transition. Your input will help us to develop a strong implementation plan. Now, the last item that we'd like to cover before opening it up to questions this evening is the decision-making process. As we mentioned before, the plan we've outlined here is a recommendation we will be presenting to the Board of Trustees. The decision to move the program locations will be made by the Board of Trustees through the consideration of closure for the purpose of relocation process. On April 26th, the board will decide whether or not we move forward in considering these changes. If they decide to move forward, they will host a public input meeting in late May to early June. Then the final decision will be made by the board on June 21st. If the moves are approved, we would plan to confirm an implementation plan by October 2022. So with that said, we're here this evening to hear questions from our audience, and we're looking forward to having an opportunity to answer some of those. So just on this slide, there are a couple of guidelines that we would like everyone to keep in mind as we move through our discussion. You are welcome to type your questions in the chat window, and we will respond verbally or with a written response. And Adele is our moderator this evening, and she is going to help us moderate what questions are being asked. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle. The Q&A window is now open and there are currently no questions in the queue, but we'll wait a few minutes and see what comes in. We'll wait about 5 minutes and if there are no questions coming in, then we will wrap up the session, but we'll just wait a few more minutes here. Okay, and it doesn't look like there are any questions at this point, so I'm going to turn it over to Prem to wrap up the session.
Thank you very much, Adele. And a couple of pieces that I'd like to put forward. Of course, we'd like to thank everyone who attended the session this evening, and perhaps talk about other spaces where we can gather your feedback and perspectives and insights, as we had no formal questions raised in the conversation this evening. So once again, wanting to emphasize that we want to ensure and help to make a smooth transition for all schools and all students who are impacted by this proposal and recommendation. So you do have other opportunities to be able to share your feedback And for parents who are connected to Alternative High School as well as Robert Thirsk High School, you have an opportunity to connect at your next school council meeting. You are also welcome to contact your school principal if you would like to share perspectives with them directly. So that's Principal Crystal Derbyshire at Robert Thirsk and Principal Dawn Barber at Alternative High School. Once again, you also have an opportunity to share some of your insights through the survey. Sorry, not through the survey, but through the access to the school. The school at the respective sites might also create other opportunities to gather input and feedback from the families and students attending Thirsk as well as Alternative High School. So once again, I'd like to wrap up. Appreciate you taking the time to be with us this evening at the session, and we wish you a wonderful rest of the evening ahead, and take good care of yourselves.